Jake Thompson parked his beaten-up pickup truck in the driveway of their suburban Austin home, the late summer sun reflecting off the polished siding, casting long shadows across the kids' toys, scattered haphazardly across the lawn. The air smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass and barbecue smoke from a neighbor's weekend gathering. He had worked late again, buried in troubleshooting code for a high-profile client. Normally, the drive home was a quiet, meditative transition between work and family, a time to decompress. Tonight, however, the atmosphere felt different, unsettling. The first thing Jake noticed was the faint scent, feminine, floral, almost too sweet. He shook his head. Emily. She was in the kitchen, humming softly to herself, standing in front of the sink, her back to him. Her auburn hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, and she wore one of the flowy blouses she reserved for work events. The blouse looked brand new. Strange, he thought. Not that he had been in a position to notice the details for a while. They had been married for 14 years. But something felt off. "Hey," he said, stepping in, dropping his backpack onto the floor by the door. "You home early?" Emily turned, smiled, and for a moment, Jake remembered why he had married her. The way her green eyes could light up a room, the effortless charm in her posture, the curve of her lips when she smiled. But tonight, that smile felt rehearsed, calculated. "Yeah," she replied casually, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Just finished some work stuff. You know, emails, calls, the usual." Her voice carried a faint tension beneath the calm. Jake nodded, though he didn't say anything. He noticed the little things that had started to pile up over the past few months. Her phone never left her side, buzzing incessantly with messages she quickly hid when he glanced. Receipts from restaurants and cafes he didn't recognize, tucked among her work files. Late nights she claimed were team meetings, but often didn't add up when he checked her calendar. Jake leaned against the counter, pretending to sip the water he poured. His mind ran through the possibilities, each one worse than the last. He wanted to trust her. He had to trust her. For their kids, for their home, for everything they had built. But the nagging feeling refused to leave. Later that evening, after tucking the kids into bed, Jake found himself in the garage, surrounded by the familiar scent of motor oil and sawdust. Cody, his best friend since high school, was leaning against his motorcycle, tinkering with the carburetor. "You look like hell, man," Cody said without looking up. "What's eating you?" Jake hesitated. "I don't know. Emily, she's acting strange. I can't put my finger on it, but something's not right." Cody finally looked up, sharp-eyed and blunt. "You don't need to put your finger on it. You need proof. That's all that matters. Otherwise, you're just spinning yourself in circles." Jake swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. He hated the idea of distrusting Emily, hated the idea of spying on her, but Cody's words resonated. In the quiet hum of the garage, surrounded by tools and the scent of gasoline, Jake made a decision. He would hire someone, a private investigator. The next morning, Jake called Marcus. Marcus had been recommended by a colleague at work, someone who understood discretion and knew how to track subtle patterns without drawing attention. By lunchtime, Marcus was at the house, dressed in casual clothes, a clipboard in hand, eyes sharp and assessing. Jake explained carefully. "I don't want to jump to conclusions, but she's been distant, secretive. I need to know the truth, quietly. No drama." Marcus nodded, scribbling notes. "I get it. We'll find out what you need to know. Nothing more, nothing less. But I have to warn you. Once you start digging, there's no turning back." Jake's stomach tightened. He had known this. He had always known it. But saying it out loud, acknowledging the possibility, made it real. The following week was torturous. Marcus delivered sporadic updates. Emily leaving work late, driving to odd locations, meeting a man for dinner she hadn't mentioned. Jake's anxiety grew, each update more damning than the last. The subtle signs he had dismissed, a lingering perfume, a hastily hidden phone, an unfamiliar name in her text messages, began to piece together a horrifying mosaic. One evening, Jake sat at the kitchen table, staring at a crumpled receipt Marcus had slipped under the door. Dinner at a high-end Italian restaurant, charged to a card Jake had never used, paid for by Emily. The date matched a night she had claimed to be at a team dinner. His hands shook slightly as he placed it on the bubble, staring at the familiar handwriting and the elegant script of the restaurant's logo. Emily walked in, humming, and froze when she saw the receipt. "Jake, what's that?" she asked, her voice too light, too controlled. Jake didn't answer immediately. He simply looked at her, eyes narrowing, studying her face for any flicker of guilt. There was a pause, a beat too long, and then she laughed softly. nervously. It's nothing, she said, reaching for it. Just an old dinner from work. Jake shook his head, placing the receipt back down. Not matching anything on your calendar, he said quietly. Care to explain? Her smile faltered, eyes darting briefly toward the hallway. That was the moment Jake realized he was no longer guessing. Something was wrong. That night, as Jake lay awake, staring at the ceiling of their master bedroom, he realized the depth of what he faced. He wasn't just confronting secret dinners or mysterious texts. He was confronting a betrayal that could redefine his life, his family, and his trust in everything he thought he knew about Emily. Somewhere between exhaustion and fear, Jake made a silent vow. He would uncover the truth, he would find the evidence, and he would protect what was truly his, the life he had built, the love he had given, and the family he intended to keep intact. Tomorrow, Marcus would follow Emily on her next outing. Tomorrow, the pieces would start to fall into place. But tonight, Jake Thompson sat in the dark, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, feeling the weight of betrayal settle over him like a Texas summer storm, heavy, unrelenting, and inevitable. The morning sun streamed through the blinds of Jake Thompson's home office, casting striped shadows across his laptop and stacks of papers. For the first time in weeks, he had a moment alone before the chaos of breakfast, school drop-offs, and emails consumed him. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, the private investigator. Jake's heart raced as he read it. Emily, with Ryan Parker at the Grandview Hotel, checked in 10:43 p.m. last night, dining receipt included, more details tonight. Jake set the phone down slowly, exhaling a long breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. Ryan Parker. The name sounded familiar from office mentions, but he had never seen him. Tall, mid-40s, successful, and apparently persuasive enough to lure his wife into something sinister. Throughout the day, Jake moved mechanically. At work, he nodded at coworkers, responded to emails, but his mind was elsewhere. Every ding of a notification made him flinch. Every passing conversation felt like a potential clue. That evening, as Emily prepared dinner with practiced efficiency, Jake remained quiet, observing her from across the kitchen island. "Everything okay?" Emily asked, her voice light, almost sing-song, hiding the tension in her eyes. Jake looked at her, saying nothing. His silence was deliberate. He didn't want confrontation tonight. He wanted information. After the kids went to bed, he finally made the call to Marcus. "Walk me through it," Jake said, voice tight. Marcus's calm, steady tone rattled against Jake's nerves. They were at the Grandview Hotel until after midnight. Ryan arrived in a dark suit, carried Emily's purse when she was fumbling with the door. They had dinner, Italian, a 3-course meal, checked out in the early hours, nothing physical witnessed, but she did leave the room with him holding her hand. Jake's hands gripped the phone tighter. Every detail built a picture too vivid to ignore. He couldn't believe it, yet he had to. Logic and love collided violently inside him. The next few days blurred into a tense haze. Marcus delivered more evidence. Dinner reservations, hotel key receipts, credit card charges, and cryptic text messages between Emily and Ryan. One message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight." Another hinted at something deeper, something Jake feared but didn't want to confront yet. "This little one will change everything. He'll be ours." Jake froze when he saw that text. Pregnancy. She was pregnant, and he was expected to assume responsibility. He stayed quiet at home, deliberately calm. Every day he observed Emily's subtle changes, the way she held her stomach, the way she smiled nervously when she thought he wasn't watching, the morning sickness she tried to hide. She had been hiding more than late nights and secret dinners. She had been weaving a trap, and now the stakes were terrifyingly real. One Friday evening, Marcus handed Jake an envelope in his office. Inside were photographs. Emily entering the hotel with Ryan, holding his hand, smiling in ways that were private and intimate. There were receipts tucked behind the photos, expensive dinners, small gifts, a hotel minibar tab. Jake studied them in silence, the weight of betrayal pressing down like the oppressive Texas heat outside. It was time to act, but not impulsively. He needed strategy. He called his lawyer, Rachel, a sharp, seasoned woman in her 40s who specialized in family law. "Rachel," Jake said during their consultation, "I need to make sure I protect myself. The kids, our finances, everything. She's pregnant, but it's not mine. I need a plan." Rachel listened patiently, her pen tapping against her notepad. "We proceed carefully. Evidence is your strongest weapon here. Document everything. Screenshots, emails, texts, receipts, anything she's tried to hide. We'll get a DNA test once the baby is born. Until then, remain calm and collect proof. Don't give her the satisfaction of seeing panic." Jake hung up, feeling a strange mix of relief and fury. Relief because he had a plan. Fury because this was the woman he had loved, married, and trusted for 14 years, now attempting to trap him in a lie that could alter his life forever. The following days were tense and calculated. Jake subtly installed a second lock on the study door, hid important documents in a safe, and began documenting all interactions with Emily. He didn't confront her directly about the affair or the pregnancy. Instead, he acted normal, participating in family routines, school events, and neighborhood barbecues, while quietly collecting evidence and observing every nuance of Emily's behavior. Then came the night Jake had been dreading. Emily returned home from what she called a team meeting, and her phone buzzed with notifications she frantically hid from him. She was acting unusually nervous. Jake decided to push the envelope carefully. "Rough day?" he asked, leaning casually against the doorframe of the living room. Emily laughed softly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You could say that." She paused, glancing down at her phone. "Everything's fine, really." Jake's gaze was unwavering. He let her words hang, unchallenged. He didn't want to fight tonight. He wanted confirmation of her manipulations. Hours later, she finally went to bed. Jake waited until the house was silent, then retrieved a hidden document Marcus had left, an official pregnancy test photo from a lab Emily had thought he would never see. He stared at it, the reality of the betrayal settling in. He could no longer deny it. She was pregnant, and it wasn't his child. He felt a wave of emotions: rage, heartbreak, disbelief, but underneath it all, a cold clarity. This wasn't about revenge yet. It was about preparation, about turning the tables in a way that would protect him, his children, and their future. Jake started piecing together a timeline. Each hotel visit, each suspicious text, each inexplicable dinner was mapped meticulously. By the end of the week, he had a dossier thick with evidence. Photographs, messages, receipts, all organized and dated. Every move Emily made, every attempt to manipulate him, was documented. Cody stopped by one evening, noticing the pile of documents on the dining room table. "Damn," Cody said, whistling low. "You're ready. You're really ready this time. Don't let her see you sweat, man. That's the key." Jake nodded silently, feeling the weight of the coming confrontation. Emily had tried to trap him with a child that wasn't his. She had thought her charm and manipulation could ensnare him. But Jake was no longer the man who would react emotionally or blindly trust appearances. He had prepared. He had proof. And when the time came, he would turn the tables. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and tension, a stark contrast to the suburban calm Jake had known just days ago. The late September sun streamed through tall windows, casting streaks of light across the polished benches and courtroom floor. Jake Thompson sat at the plaintiff's table, neatly dressed in a navy suit that Cody had insisted made him look like a man in control, not a victim. His hands were clasped tightly, the knuckles pale from the grip, but his jaw was set. Across the room, Emily sat with her lawyer, a sharp woman with a perfect blonde bob and expensive heels. She fidgeted, tapping her fingers nervously on the edge of the table. Jake noticed her phone vibrating in her purse, and he knew she was checking for updates, checking for control. But tonight, the control was his. The judge, an older man with a calm demeanor and sharp eyes, called the court to order. Jake's lawyer, Rachel, stood, adjusting her blazer. "Your Honor, we are here to establish custody, financial responsibility, and the truth surrounding the alleged pregnancy and paternity claims put forth by Ms. Thompson." Emily's lawyer interjected, her voice smooth and rehearsed. "Your Honor, my client maintains that she deserves support, and that the child in question is being unfairly contested. We request that the court consider her claims in full." Jake felt a flicker of anger, but kept his composure. He had prepared for this, every move calculated, every piece of evidence documented. The dossier on the table before him wasn't just papers and photographs. It was truth, undeniable and precise. Rachel began her presentation. She laid out the timeline: late-night dinners, hotel visits, suspicious messages, and, crucially, Emily's text messages explicitly mentioning the child. "This little one will change everything. He'll be ours." Rachel's voice was firm but measured. "Your Honor, the evidence presented here confirms not only an ongoing affair, but also deliberate attempts to misrepresent paternity for financial and emotional gain." Marcus, the private investigator, was called to testify. He described Emily's movements in detail: hotel check-ins, dinner receipts, the time she met Ryan Parker. He produced photographs: Emily laughing, holding Ryan's hand, carrying small gifts, clearly engaged in intimacy outside of her marriage. Each photo was time-stamped, each receipt matched Marcus's timeline. The courtroom was silent. Even Emily's lawyer faltered, rifling through papers with tense hands. Jake noticed Emily's face pale as the narrative unfolded, the perfect facade cracking under the weight of incontrovertible evidence. Rachel then turned to the final piece, the DNA test. A preliminary paternity test had been conducted, discreetly, after Emily had agreed, unknowingly, to a medical consultation Jake had arranged under the guise of a routine checkup. The results were undeniable. The child was not Jake's. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Is this confirmed, Ms. Thompson?" Emily's lips trembled. "Yes," she whispered, barely audible. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Jake sat perfectly still, absorbing the moment. This was the culmination of weeks of careful observation, documentation, and strategic planning. He wasn't here to humiliate Emily, although the courtroom drama made the truth unavoidable. He was here to reclaim his life, protect his children, and ensure justice, not vengeance, was served. Rachel's closing statement was precise. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. The child is not Mr. Thompson's. Any claims to financial support or custody based on misrepresentation are unfounded. Mr. Thompson has acted responsibly, with restraint, and now seeks only the preservation of his family and his rightful interests." Emily's defense faltered. There was no plausible counter-narrative. Her smugness, her calculated attempts at control, her carefully hidden texts and receipts, every single one had been cataloged, time-stamped, and verified. The truth had a weight that no fabrication could withstand. Finally, the judge spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Based on the evidence presented, it is clear that the child in question is not Mr. Thompson's. Custody arrangements for Mr. Thompson's existing children remain unchanged. Any financial claims by Ms. Thompson related to the alleged child are dismissed. This court emphasizes honesty and integrity in marital conduct, and the evidence presented here demonstrates a breach of trust by Ms. Thompson." Jake felt a wave of relief, mingled with exhaustion. The months of tension, observation, and emotional torment had culminated in a legal vindication. Yet, he wasn't celebrating. He was calculating the next steps, the rebuilding of trust with his children, the careful navigation of a fractured family life, and the restoration of normalcy. Emily's face crumpled. The facade of composure was gone. She opened her mouth, probably to protest, to argue, to plead, but Rachel's steely gaze reminded her that the moment for deception had passed. After the court adjourned, Jake walked outside, the warm Texas sun on his face. Cody was waiting by the car, giving a thumbs up. "You did it, man," Cody said. "All that planning, patience, you turned the tables perfectly." Jake nodded, thinking of the nights spent mapping hotel visits, tracking receipts, installing discreet security measures, and documenting every interaction. "It wasn't just about winning," he said quietly. "It was about taking control of my life before it slipped away. And now, it's finally mine again." For the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of peace, a clarity that only comes when the fog of deceit is lifted. The storm of betrayal had passed, and although the scars would remain, the structure of his life, his home, his children, his future, was intact. Yet even as Jake drove home, the victory was bittersweet. He knew that trust, once shattered, takes years to rebuild. He knew that Emily's actions had permanently altered the dynamics of their marriage. But he also knew something more vital. He had turned the tables. The trap had failed. The betrayal had been exposed. And Jake Thompson had emerged not as a victim, but as a man who had reclaimed his power, his agency, and his dignity. The Thompson house was quiet in the early morning, the kind of silence that feels heavy with history, but promising in its calm. Jake sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of black coffee, while the aroma of toast and brewed tea drifted from the corner where his youngest, Lily, had made a small breakfast for him. He didn't rush. For the first time in months, he could breathe without the weight of uncertainty pressing down. The courtroom battle, the hidden hotel visits, the secrets, and the betrayal, they were behind him now. Emily had moved out temporarily, staying with her sister while legal proceedings settled, leaving Jake and the children to reclaim the normalcy that had been shattered. The house felt emptier, quieter, but also lighter, as if honesty itself had purged the tension that had lived in the walls. He watched his kids shuffle in their pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes and clutching stuffed animals. Their trust had been tested, like his own, but they were resilient. "Dad?" Lily asked softly, setting a plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. "Everything's okay now?" Jake smiled, the lines of exhaustion and grief softening for the first time. "Yeah, kiddo, we're okay. Better than okay. We're moving forward." The children didn't fully grasp the complexity of betrayal, the layers of lies that had been hidden beneath family dinners and bedtime stories. But they understood stability, safety, and the presence of a father who had fought, quietly and fiercely, to protect them. And Jake, for his part, understood something he hadn't realized until now. Sometimes strength is not loud or vengeful. It is steady, patient, and deliberate. Over the next weeks, Jake focused on rebuilding. Not just his home, but the emotional foundations that had been eroded. He enrolled in evening classes for stress management and parenting strategies, spending more intentional time with his children. Even small gestures, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories, listening to their schoolyard dramas, felt revolutionary after months of tension and suspicion. Emily, meanwhile, had begun to confront her own reality. The failed plan to manipulate Jake had left her exposed, and the court's decisions were a humbling reckoning. When she reached out for limited communication regarding the children, Jake responded with caution, but without malice. "Let's keep it about the kids," he told her during their first phone call after the ruling. "That's the priority." Her voice was softer than he remembered, tinged with remorse and uncertainty. I understand," she said. "I made mistakes. I never meant to hurt them like this." Jake didn't respond with anger. He simply nodded to himself, understanding that some battles were fought not with words, but with quiet, unshakable boundaries. "We'll take it one step at a time," he said. Days turned into weeks. Jake found solace in simple routines: morning walks with the kids, late-night cups of coffee on the porch, occasional lunch dates with friends who had stood by him. Each small act of normalcy was a victory, a reclamation of life that had been nearly stolen from him. One afternoon, while Lily was playing with blocks in the living room, Jake received a text from Cody. "Man, you did it. You turned betrayal into clarity. Proud of you." Jake smiled, feeling the weight of months of strategy, patience, and calculated action settle into quiet triumph. The anger and heartbreak were still there, shadows lingering in the corners of his mind, but they no longer dictated his life. He had learned, painfully, that control over one's life does not come from revenge alone. It comes from foresight, discipline, and the courage to face truth unflinchingly. As the sun dipped low over the Thompson property, casting golden light through the living room windows, Jake sat on the porch with a notebook. He began to jot down reflections, lessons, and plans for the future, not out of obsession, but as a means to solidify the new foundation he was building. Emily's name crossed his mind briefly, and he allowed himself one small sigh. She was part of his past, a complicated chapter that had tested him, shaped him, and ultimately reminded him of the value of self-respect and patience. But she would not define the future. That was his responsibility, and he would carry it with care. By evening, the house was quiet again. Jake tucked the children into bed, kissed their foreheads, and lingered by the doorway, watching them sleep. It was a peaceful vigilance, the kind born of experience, love, and the knowledge that some battles are won, not with shouting or confrontation, but with steady resolve and unwavering commitment to what truly matters. Jake stepped outside, the Texas sky now painted in streaks of deep orange and violet. He breathed in the warm air, feeling a profound sense of release. The betrayal, the manipulations, the threat of an unwanted child, these were behind him. What lay ahead was his to shape, a life rebuilt, children loved, trust restored in small, deliberate increments, and a heart cautiously open to the possibility of genuine connection once more. The storm had passed. The aftermath was quiet, sure, and steady, and Jake Thompson, standing in the glow of a settling sun, knew with certainty that he had not only survived betrayal, but had emerged stronger, wiser, and in control of his own destiny.